because I need to branch out. I don't necessarily want to do YouTube because fuck YouTube.
Yeah,
but,
no shit.
But there are some other platforms out there, and
there's
I think
a lot of.
Yeah, and there should be competition, and there should be some fucking freedom of speech. I got to start experimenting with it because I need to branch out. I don't necessarily. Oh, that was me again.
It was. You got to mute it because it's live right now on YouTube. So if you don't mute it, you'll get this fucking audio loop that'll drive you insane.
Oh my God, that's awful.
And it's delayed, but that's all right.
Okay, we're on YouTube.
Last
so
night with Valerie.
My language then, yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna watch mine. You gotta have some passion in things, Sean. Don't forget the passion of things. Come on.
Absolutely.
Fucking idiots.
Yeah, I thought only Protestants had that. I'll square myself away though.
Give me a second, buddy. I'll be speaking in tongues.
Nice.
I remember that horse shit.
Oh my gosh, grew up.
Yeah. Okay, so what we were talking about, we branched off into a couple of different places, but
one was the men's group.
One was the meds group, and I'm always good. Maybe that's why I wasn't remembering what we were talking about, because I'm good to talk about that at a moment's notice anytime. The other thing we were talking about, we were just talking about healthy brain, healthy spirit, healthy body.
I think that's a lot of what it is. Valerie's show last night, she was talking about something that really fired my imagination. Mm-hmm. She really drove home for me at a couple of junctions in the conversation that these people, our ancestors, were the spiritual was every bit as much a part of the life of the individuals living in that time as was the mental, emotional, and physical aspects of their existence there.
Yep.
And we kind of lost that, and we kind of deadened it. We've spent a lot of time deadening that experience. It's almost like it's been partially cauterized. You know what I mean? It has some kind of nerve damage.
Intentionally, because those who want to control, if we have that connection, then they can't manipulate us as easily.
Well, there is a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of truth in that.
The best manipulation is the passive manipulation. I mean, I learned a lot from the folks in PsyOps when I was there. And what I'll tell you is that the three of us sitting here right now, we are absolutely nerds. Like, like no way around that. Okay. And what happens with people like us is we get into this information bubble that's provided for us by the academic community. And one of the things that does is, we've got at least 12 years of indoctrination to run the creativity and the joy of life right out of us and make us really good slaves. And that's just understood. I mean, this isn't some kind of weird conspiracy theory or anything. It's just straight up observation.
Yeah, public schooling at its finest.
Yeah.
But somehow all three of us have managed to, despite that, maintain that connection to our divine side.
Yep.
Usually caused by great pain.
What's that?
It's usually caused by an enormous amount of pain or suffering.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah.
So the pain, can come in a variety of ways. I got a double whammy. I had some physical shit going on, but then also I discovered that the sacrifices that I thought I was making for freedom and for my country and all that kind of stuff turned out to be really just about making the world safe for American industry. Yeah. And that was a hard pill to swallow. I think I was in my late 20s when I had to swallow that one.
It would have been real nice if they just called it an empire from the beginning. I mean, I'd have felt a whole lot better.
Yeah, I mean, and just tattooed SPQR on our fucking shoulders like we should have. Right. I'm not here bitching about all that. I mean, this is something that an old soldier comes to terms with at some point before he retires. And I'm not bitching either, because I got a little piece of the pie while I was doing mercenary work for 15 years. So I understand. But, there's a whole bunch of shit. There's a whole bunch of illusions that we allow to be built for ourselves because we get stuck in our heads. Like, the government and, the church, if that's what you're part of or whatever, those are all narcissistic egregore entities. You know what I'm saying? They are created by us I say us loosely, but they're created by us, where they're accepted by us. And, the scientific community's doing a lot the same kind of shit, and they're creating this kind of information bubble around us. And that's really where psychology and the medical field are failing us, just straight up failing us.
That's kind of why I love the alt medicine stuff that I've been going down all the different rabbit holes, because a lot of the doctors that I'm now at least Twitter friends with are breaking that mold. They're trying to do the research and say, wait a minute, all this shit isn't curing our patients. And they're having to go through that same, it's like, I was always cynical about the medical profession. And then once I had my injury in the Middle East and realized that, hey, half their pharmaceuticals were going to kill me, I had to go down this alternative medicine route.
Yeah. And I was in a lot the same boat. Whole lot of toxicity from from vaccines and being around the wrong explosions at the wrong time, and all kinds of shit. And I don't mean the kind that blow you up. I mean the kind that make a mushroom over you. They call them shots. The EOD folks setting up who knows what they're putting in there.
Familiar with a lot of that.
Yeah. And
I got a cousin that was in Desert Storm, and they burned pit after pit of munition they discovered over there. His lungs are so fucked up, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
And the VA, they're dragging their feet on authorizing anything, even though they've admitted it, that there were chemical munitions in those pits, that they were burned. There was all kinds of stuff in there. But he also he wasn't a mercenary, he was more of a technical advisor.
Sure.
But he got hit with an IED in a fucking laundromat.
Shit.
So he's got that, and he's got the lung issues from burning pits of, cached munitions that were full of, it was artillery rounds, full of chemical munitions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's you do have to wonder. We do go through a lot of pain. We do have to deal with doctors that call it there's a reason they call it a practice. And we are seeing a certain percentage of these individuals wake up to the idea that we got to find a better way.
Yeah.
Was talking to somebody the other day, did you see the video of the old guy getting beat up and the old woman getting beat up?
Yep. Sure did.
Okay, let's think about that for just a second, because it's not far from what they're kind of got us going into right now. So there's a couple of individuals that really have no quality of life whatsoever, but there are a lot of companies making a ton of money off of their existence simply as it is.
Yeah.
No benefit to their existence. No one comes to see them. No one takes care of them other than the nurses that are paid to do it and the medicines that keep them alive, because it keeps them alive.
Yeah.
And yet Valerie was talking last night that there's a quality of life at that age that we're just now beginning to discover might be a reality. She pointed out several places in the lore of what a good age span should be for an individual. Archaeological digs of individuals that are healthy and strong in their 60s, 70s, 80s.
Absolutely.
One more time frame.
Look, one of the biggest fucking lies that we get sold, especially about, and it goes along with thinking that our ancestors are fucking morons, and that and that they didn't know, and that everything is a dig.
And they all died before they were 30.
Okay, so it goes along with that, but what they're doing is they're giving you an average on the life, the life expectancy, and they're including 6 or 7 per capita, 6 or 7 stillbirths or births or children that died before they reached the age of 6 years old. If you take that out of the equation, you're going to get a lot more real perspective. And man, what a fucking mess! I could go on for this for hours. But that's what it's. That's
kind of what we're trying to discover here. Good. That's what we're all trying to figure out. So we've all made this radical change for our spirituality. We're both doing quite well with it. We're all doing quite well with it. Things are beginning to change. Life is looking up for a lot of people. There's some neat things happening for people that wants to be a part of this. And yet I still see individuals that are dealing with an inordinate amount of pain and suffering and seem to have no clear way to handle that. And yet, the more we look at the medicine, the more we need to understand it may not necessarily be what's right. I mean, I know individuals that have had cancer that have taken these homeopathic remedies, come out of it quite well, as a matter of fact. Sheep's oil, cat's claw, all of these herbal remedies that seem to provide They say THC does
Cat's
the
claw
same
is
thing.
fantastic for cancer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about cancer is you have to, just like everything else, you know, I approach this stuff exactly the same way that I approach like our lore and the ancient way that our ancestors did stuff. I look at it the same way. I try to go back as far as I can and find two things: the greatest common factor and the lowest common denominator. With cancer, the lowest common denominator is oxygenated cells. Okay, so
Yes.
whatever your condition is of your body that is not allowing for enough oxygen or not allowing for enough CO2 to escape, okay, either one of those two things, that you fix that, you fix the rest of it. Now, how you go about fixing that, you've got a wide variety of choices. And to get in the mindset of thinking that this cures cancer is complete fucking bullshit.
Yeah, there are so many ways.
Right. You have to get in the mindset of what I'm experiencing is my body's intelligent response to the stimulus around it. Okay.
Yep.
I've never met a doctor that was smarter than my fucking body. Never, not once.
Yeah.
Here's what I got. You go through and you figure out, and this works for the lore, and I'll show it for you here in a second, but you go and you find the one thing that they all have in common, and then you figure out where you're going wrong. Okay. There's no one size fits all. Getting that headspace. That's where we are with law. That's where we are with science. That's where science fiction. I mean, all of it. That's getting us stuck in our head and not listening and looking at what's going on in our body and not asking the right fucking questions. Same thing applies to our lore as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't good enough for me to know what was written in the 1300s. I wanted to understand what our ancestors knew and understood before Christian intervention of any kind. And I discovered I had to split this up into three ways. I had to get a mental version of it, a spiritual version of it, and a physical version of it. And so while we do make fun of the guys that go out there and, you know, dress up and hit each other with spears and axes and shit, that's actually helpful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. A lot of people enjoy it. A lot of people find a lot of freedom in it. Valerie went so far as to learn German so she could read the Eddas in German, and it was a world of difference. Much of the English translation, as she pointed out, occurred in the Victorian age. So there was a lot of these terms that were just kind of put in because they were the terms of the day. And she read it in German, she found it to be a much different story.
Not everybody doing the translation was really committed to the idea. As a matter of fact, most of them weren't, especially in the really early days. Now, that doesn't mean that I shit canned the idea of the lore. I never have done that. And I've read it. I started reading it when I was 10. I'm still reading it today. I'm not probably doing
shit, man. It's all we got.
Right. However, it dawned on me that, you know, through the study of epigenetics and a few other things and meditation and taking your consciousness to different places, that if your ancestors are in your blood, that has got to be much easier to reach than city of any
it's
kind.
Amazing to do that.
That's why I teach people what I know about doing it, you know. And you add that, and this isn't, you know, it's not one of those deals where it's either UPG or you know, the written documents. It's both. You got to figure out how that works for you, and then also figure out with your own ancestors what that means, you know.
See, the thing about the UPG that always catches my eye is that a lot of people have, some of it is legitimately retarded.
I agree.
But you got to look at some things here when you take that into consideration. So if there's somebody that's had a personal gnosis that they're using it in their life, they're having success with it, what does it cost me to allow them to believe in that?
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? Doesn't cost me anything. Doesn't cost me I don't get any taller. I don't get any shorter. I don't get any fatter. I still get to be me. And that person gets to go on a good life. Do you know the freedom that comes with not trying to justify that? Now, if you start coming at me talking about vampires, I'm gonna be a little hesitant because I really don't want to believe about things that go wrong in the dark. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But, well, all that shit comes down to definitions anyway, really. I mean, stuff like that. We're using,
because I've met some vampires. They'll sit in the room and they'll be sick and they'll suck up all the energy from everybody that comes by.
That's a real vampire.
They are.
No shit. So, you know, it's like.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
We're aware of how these things are moving. We're aware of how these things are working. There's a lot of people that are kind of catching on. How do we begin to put them in a place that allows them that freedom to continue to pursue those things. Because I think that's one of the biggest hindrances to men and women alike, is the ability to feel like they're free enough to explore these other areas. Because, oh, well, that's, and there's a lot of people that are like, no, you can't do that. That's not right. No, you can't do that. That's not right. Well, now, wait a minute. Who says it ain't right?
Yeah.
Who said that wasn't right?
Who gave you the authority over me? Sorry, no.
Exactly.
Well, that's
right.
one side of it. Okay, that's a legitimate side of it. But the other side of it, I mean, there's two other sides of it. There's the archaeological side of it, which indicates that every fucking single village had their own way of doing things, and they were fine with it. If you wanted to do things this way, hey, we know a village where people do it that way. You can, and it's right over the hills. You can go right over there.
Yeah.
And you'll probably find a great mate and have a happy life, and tell them to send somebody over here to replace you, because, you know, village numbers matter.
Yeah.
Right. True. Very true. That book, The Ancient Teutonic Priesthood, goes into depth about that. You know,
Sure does. Yeah.
Every village had a Gothi. Every village and every Celtic village had a bard or a Scot. There was three levels of them. They all had their roles. And even if you go to the Slavic nations, the roles were more pronounced. They were
even today.
Some of them had their own stable of magnificent horses and their own personal retinue of warriors.
Yep.
They served a role there, and that it's real hard in a nation like we have today to pass this real homogenous kind of idea onto the whole and call it right. I think we've conditioned ourselves to expect that by the bipolar nature of our political system itself.
Very good. Yes.
So we're sitting here at the edge of this spiritual ocean, standing on this seashore, getting people to dive in and encourage them to live a better life, especially men who are thoroughly convinced they're absolutely fucking right. What's that image we need to create? What does the image look like of someone that's successful in this? What does the image look like for someone that really has it together?
Well, our ancestors knew that image is the trap.
Really?
Yep. The image is the trap. The success
can be. It very much can be.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's part of the reason why, you know, they're the images of the gods that you see and the images of the ancestors, and in the few places where they actually had some sort of a physical manifest, you know, version of that, like a statue or something like that. Mm-hmm. They were wooden and they were obscure. I mean, they look like Van Gogh, or not even that, you know.
Well, see, that's my point. Even the Van Gogh, even the nebulous nature of the Starry Night, even the or some of the other paintings of that nature, they create in an individual a certain desire. It paints upon the canvas of the individual's imagination a feeling.
Did you say the canvas of their?
The canvas of the person's imagination. I don't fool with no cannabis, man. Ain't no cannabis, man. but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about when I say the image. Because we're such a visually stimulated folk. Now, I will say that Audible is really exploding because people are built to listen to a story. But for the last 75 years, everybody's been sitting in front of a TV. And if they don't see it, they don't know what to think about it. If they don't see it, they don't understand how to process it. And we've kind of defaulted to this visual setting and just completely eradicated our ability to listen, to smell, to think, to touch, all of those other senses that are so important to the world that we live in. So when I say we may have failed to create that image, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And granted, you're right. It is kind of one of those things where it's a subtle manipulation, as
it is.
Psyops might consider it. But I think we're beginning to need that.
I think I know what we're looking for in this, and I think I know what we're coming to with what we're talking about here.
Dude, there's so much fucking coming our way, we can't begin to process what's fixing to happen. I just mean this subject, yeah. We can all feel it, you know what I mean? Every one of us is feeling it. We're like, oh shit, what now?
I know. Yeah, definitely. So the old storytellers, even contemporary storytellers, if they're really good, that stuff's done in person. It's done in person, and it's done in person for a real important reason, okay? Because there's an energetic flow that is coming out of that storyteller, And that's what's the most important thing. The rest of it, he's wrapping that energetic flow in words, okay? But it's just coming out of him and into the crowd in front of him. Hopefully not a huge crowd, but a crowd, you know, and they're close enough to feel it, right? We've got lots of Neolithic and forward examples of how important that was, and the energy that goes with it, especially if it's in the form of song or some sort of a rhythmic delivery, because the rhythmic delivery and the notes that go with it, that keeps that story from ever deviating, you know?
Yes, that's absolutely right. That's why mentorship is such a crucial thing for everything we're trying to achieve here is a successful mentorship. Yes. I will tell you that having spoke in front of a lot of big crowds, I mean, I think the largest crowd I ever spoke in front of was like 800 people.
Holy crap.
And that was when I was 21, or no, I wasn't 20. I wasn't even, it was before I went in the Army. I was speaking on teenage drug addiction and recovery.
Wow.
Broken Arrow Public High School. But when you get into these groups that, like when you go to these big events and you're in a room, and if you're closer than 5 feet to the front row, it's overwhelming. It's so powerful. It will draw you off of what you're trying to say. It will make you forget it. It will overwhelm you. But if you're, say, in a circle and doing a samba or a bloat, and there's like the Wayfarers bloat I did one year, it was like 100 people in that circle, but it was a big circle.
Yeah.
And I really got to cut loose with that. I really got to put the when you're that close to the energy of all of those people, and they're waiting on you to say something magnificent. It'll eat your lunch if you're not fucking ready for it. And picturing them nude don't work. Don't pay no attention to that nonsense.
No, it doesn't.
I'm gonna tell you right now, that's not funny.
Music, and sometimes that stage is like 5 foot away from the people that's right there, and sometimes it's like that flow is good, and other times I don't know what it is. It's just like, okay, I think I want to get out of here as soon as I can.
It gets hot, doesn't it? I start to sweat. I start to sweat under my skin, and I feel it. It's the craziest thing, but you really can feel what people are thinking about what you're saying.
You definitely can. And that's a reciprocation. That's a perfect example of Gebo in function. You know what I mean?
Perfect.
In case somebody watching doesn't know, Gebo is the rune that is there for, it looks like an X, and it's about the fair and equal exchange of energy. At least that's the aspect we're talking about it right now.
That's where we get Xmas. That's what I tell everybody anyway. That's where that comes from. It's
where we get excess.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Mine now.
So about our conditioning, right? You know, in land navigation, the first thing you got to do is not find out where you're going, but figure out where the fuck you are, right?
Yes.
If we continue to live in an illusory state, and our people continue, and that's what they are. They're our people, okay? If our people continue to live in an illusory state of existence, where they're not really coming to terms with what the fuck's going on around them, for fear of, you know, somebody call them maybe a conspiracy theorist or an
racist,
something, or fucking whatever label, all right, whatever label the empire uses to keep us in line. If we don't start altering that construct of reality, okay, then what's going to happen is we're going to continue to be Christians with a heathen veneer. We're not, you know.
That's kind of what Valerie was getting at too. She was getting, you know, words matter.
Yes.
Words matter, and we keep using these terms that have a Judeo-Christian foundation, and they matter. But I look at them. I look at them as all the various scars that are left upon us by that kind of hardcore manipulation, the probationary status of life, the guilt, all of those things that have been foisted upon society as if they were the right thing to do. They leave scar tissue. They leave deep-seated pain in women and men.
Yep.
And they're trying to grow. We sacrificed the man and woman making ceremonies for convenience, so we could all go make some money. And we've left our children with an inordinate amount of uncertainty. And lots of people our age still have an enormous amount of very deep-seated pain they have no idea what to do with. See, this is the kind of thing that concerns me the most, because I want to see people heal out of that. And I'm absolutely certain that the answers to how to do that are in our lore. And I think that some of the things you talk about, you know, because you can't begin to address that stuff, those perceived weaknesses, or what comes with that pain if you have not the clear mind or the high-mindedness, as Valerie called it,
Yeah.
to really begin to approach it. Because it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to go into those things that failures of people that were supposed to love you and they failed you in some way, especially those closest to us. I had a dream about it last night, and it's been on my mind all day. You know, we make fun of girls that have daddy issues, and I'm sitting here and I was thinking about it. I was like, that's not something we need to be making fun of.
Yeah.
That's not something we need to be making fun of at all. She's got daddy issues. Well, that means you better act like you're on the up and up all the time, because somebody's got to step up to the plate. And it's an amazing thing to see. I'll tell you about that dream when we get done with this, Sean.
Okay, I want to hear about it.
You'll like the shit.
You cannot. The biggest problem that I run into, and I talk to people probably as much as you do, maybe a little bit more in depth on individuals, man, but I don't know, maybe not. But what I keep running into is you can't teach a fucking slave to be free.
Yeah.
You can't. You have to recognize that there are certain parts of your psychology or your physicality or your spirituality that have grown up in slavery in order to start changing some of that, you know? And
I do agree with that.
Some of the most controversial material that I have found to be the most useful was some of the stuff that was written about how to manipulate and maintain black slaves in this country in over the course of the last 200 years. The shit that was done to them is the same shit that's being done to us in a slightly more subtle way.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, you are there.
I'm here.
Can't see you.
You don't want to.
She's hiding. She doesn't know.
But yeah, it's
the land nav example. What we're talking about is figure out where you are. But those of us, and a couple of us, will start figuring out who we are within our communities a little bit at a time. We got to nurture that so that they can be the combat multiplier to help their folks in their small community.
You know what the resistance to that looks like is you have so many groups, and when somebody does begin to step away from the approved thought process of the groupthink, or the conditioned thought process, because technically it is just another example of a conditioned thought process. When you begin to step away from that, then the criticism is he's just out for himself. And
I don't think anybody's ever said that about you or me.
Bullshit. They've said about me. I don't know how many times I've heard that nonsense.
People say all sorts of crazy shit.
He's just out for himself. Yeah, I'm still ahead of you, motherfucker. This is the way I feel about it.
I have a similar issue with all of this holistic medicine, and it's like I get people saying like that I'm talking crazy stuff, and I'm like, do I have to show you my medical degree? Do I have to show you that
Exactly. Do I have to show you my college transcript to show you how far I made it into medical school? You know, does that? Yeah. No, I was really good on the brainwashing. I was all for it. You know, here's the thing. Here's what fucks up people here's what fucks up the value of what you and I are doing, Aislinn, with regard to the physical manifestation of health, right?
Sure.
When if you look at errors in ways of thinking or ways of approaching any condition, okay? When the academic community has an error in that condition, okay? If you ever hear about it, then it's like, oh, well, we're learning, okay? But if you do it or I do it, right?
Oh yeah, we're nut jobs. Yeah, which is why I have spent so much time making sure that I know the science side of things, just so that I can say, okay, here's this herb over here that's great.
Oh, wait a minute. Both sides are science.
I know they
Both sides are science. One's paid for by pharmaceutical companies, and the other, we're struggling around in the dark trying to figure some of these things out and trying to find out what our ancestors did, because it's being repressed by an industry that owns Congress.
Oh, I know that.
Another example of an egregore. The people that founded those companies no longer exist. The people that started those money-making operations are not there anymore. They're simply, that company exists for one purpose, and that is to make money.
That's
it really cares not what the damage is that it occurs to the society around it. And I think we're dealing with something much more simple than just because the people that are buying into this at other echelons of the government and big business, they're firmly convinced that exactly what they're doing is correct. And
Yeah.
I've said in those boardrooms of Fortune 100 companies, I've said in the boardrooms of Warner Brothers and Sprint and T-Mobile and AT&T, and sat in there and listened to them, and everything we were discussing, everything we talked about in those boardrooms, we were doing for the benefit of the company and to provide a service to the population, to the customer that really wanted it. We never once thought about, well, this might not be so good. If we put that Disney show on, is that going to be an issue? These are not things that are discussed. The people that are doing this are every bit, they're just at a different level. The things we're talking about are so alien to that kind of individual and the life that they live. We might as well be from Mars.
That's
so
right.
What we're really faced with is creating that idea, because it's real easy to go down these rabbit holes. What we're faced with is creating an individual, a well-rounded individual who, when they walk down the street, and I've said it many, many times, other people look at them and say, I want someone what that guy has working in my life. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be over the top.
No, it doesn't.
We seem to be getting so distracted by so many different things. And what we see on social media, troll through it any given day, there's 100 things I see from 12 or 15 different people that make me want to get so mad I could shit standing up. Though I was told today that I've always existed on kind of a low simmer. I'm not sure how that means, but that's kind of how it is.
It's like all of us in this discussion have that low simmer thing.
Right, we're kind of on that low simmer. Yeah, don't flick that. Come on, don't fool with it. But,
yeah.
So, because I think we are aware of these things, and for me, I mean, I got to draw a line. I got to draw a line of what I can work with and what I can't.
Yes.
And so I'm sitting here, and we talked about that men's group. I'm trying to start that men's group. I'm trying to get it, and I'm looking at it. Okay, how many men have the courage to say, you know what? There's some things about myself I'm going to change. I want to be better.
Or
I don't know why I want to be better. Bryan Wilton says he needs to be better, but I don't know if I do, because, well, I have a 6-figure job. I got a good wife. I got kids. I got cars in the garage. I got a house, all this stuff. That motherfucker, he really got shit right now, So why
all the
should I
shit that
listen to
the
him?
empire says you should have, they have.
Yeah, well, I've had it 2 or 3 times in my life and
Me
more.
too.
So I'm sitting here thinking, what are we going to say to help these men say, you know what, maybe this perception that we have of the world around us, maybe I should quit biting into the negative aspects of that and boosting the image of myself. And maybe I should start looking at the 10 positive things I need to be seeing so I can step up to the plate and be somebody worthy of remark. I think that's one of the things I see from our ancestors. It said that Prince always ran first into the battle, but none of his soldiers wanted to be outdone by him. So they were all in it to win it of their own accord, trying to measure up. I'm not seeing that same mindset among the people today. I'm not seeing the same mindset. I see
that mindset can't be propagated from a national level. Or
no, it can't.
And they're like the frogs in the stew pot. They've been swimming in mediocrity for their entire lives. They don't know and they're so used to, if they try to excel, somebody else is grabbing them and pulling them back down.
Yep.
And so there's that whole conditioning. It goes back to that whole slavery stuff you're talking about.
Yep, that's exactly right.
They keep pointing fingers and they don't have to look at what they're doing,
Instead of saying, I don't care what anybody else is doing, I don't care about their emotional manipulation, their mental manipulation, any of that. It's like, and I've never cared about any of that, which is why I don't make a lot of friends.
I don't make a lot of friends either, honey. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know. But you're cool.
No, they'll smile at me, they'll shake my hand, and then they'll go tell somebody else about, well, I don't really like you.
Yeah,
that's slave activity, man. Grown-ups don't do that. People who are responsible for themselves don't do that. And the best way, not the best way, but a very good way to develop the kind of personal, social, and mental, psychological responsibility that is necessary to be able to do these great things that we're all talking about, that happens at a village level, guys.
Yes, it does.
We have to promote the development of that stuff without, we have to promote people asking the right kind of questions, teaching them how to do it, we got to promote small groups of people doing their thing their way. If it ain't fucking perfect, guess what? It's okay.
It's
You know?
okay.
And our
And
ancestors
get
carried
along.
on that way for like 40,000 years very successfully.
You know, the center of that was always the family.
Yes.
You know, and here down south, you know, you got these big families and these big clans. I know Robbie and Roxy, they've done an exceptional job of doing that with their family and where
We
they
got
are.
them up north here too.
I see, yeah, and I see, you know, the McDougal's have done the same thing with their family.
Mhm.
Wiltons are working on it. But when we try to build these tribes, you know, I see that major pitfall of everyone that tries to build a kindred. They think, well, that person has a hammer. They're of the same mindset that I am, and that's
Right.
not always the case. You know,
Sadly.
more often than not, it's an excuse to act ass because you wear a hammer.
Yeah.
So we need that solid body of information. We need the teaching that you provide, that I provide, that Heather provides. Those are important things.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of
I think
important
we're
things that
getting
help
there.
people heal. Huh?
We are getting there.
I think we're getting there because if you notice over the last, that last years, the people like us are people that,
We're starting to gravitate towards each other.
Yep.
yeah, well, first we kind of gravitated away and we're just solo. And then now it kind of seems like these little groups are being formed and that's gaining a little bit of respect, gaining a little bit of like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there really is energy in the Lord, in the gods,
There absolutely is. I mean, that's what all
I
of it
have high
represents.
hopes.
What?
I have high hopes.
Right. Well,
Well,
I'm gonna pick on Bryan for a second. And Bryan's problem is that he's too he wants this to happen too fast. He wants to see this shit in his lifetime, you know. And
we all want to see it in our lifetime.
well, my problem is I'm like, you know, we're laying a foundation that's 350 miles long, and it's got to be within, you know, a centimeter variance. You know, that's my problem. That's what I got to work on for me. Is, you know, not getting all, you know.
Our issue to bring it together.
It's gonna happen. We are laying the groundwork for the recovery of our folk soul. You know.
Yes.
You know, it really is true. And I am aware of that. I don't like it, but I'm aware
I'm not
of it.
patient either. I'm just better at it.
I'm very much aware of everything that we're doing, you know, and that we are laying groundwork. We are creating new pathways for people to follow, new ideas for people to embrace. And it really, for me, it really drives home the seriousness of the matter, the real obligation we have to try to do our best. And that's a real important thing to me. I don't feel like we have any kind of legitimacy if we fall back into a frame of mind where we allow someone else to handle it for us.
Yes.
I don't think there's any kind of legitimacy in that thought process. And
I got to tell you, sometimes I get paralyzed by that thought. I get paralyzed. I get stuck in my work and cannot move forward because I'm sitting there thinking, you know, what if one step in this is wrong and too many people fucking listen to, you know, or doesn't work for them? You know, what if I'm the anomaly and what works for me, and, you know, I'm teaching all these people all these great things that don't fucking work for them, you know? And I'm like, and I rack my brain over that sometimes. I get through it, but it's like writer's block. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And I've thought about that many times. Some of the first books I've written, while they were a fine expression of what I was at the time,
Right.
they're nowhere near where I am now. And I see people buying those. I see people buying those older books, and I have to kind of content myself with the idea that, well, that's where they are.
Exactly.
That's the part that they like. That's where they are. Maybe they're growing. Every book that I've written, I really hope is an example of me moving forward as an individual, me cultivating some other aspect of myself.
Well, it's a time capsule, man. It really is. And
It really is. It really is.
But like he says, it's that person at that point
Mhm.
is in that headspace where he needs those baby steps to get onto the bigger things. So your progression is great and that's fantastic, but other people aren't there yet. And I have had to get to that point because unfortunately, being a very, very intelligent person who grew up with scientists as my family, I've had to learn not to blow up at somebody just because they don't understand something that to me was normal and common.
Right.
Yeah, from the
And then-
spiritual perspective or the consciousness perspective, I have to remind myself of that too sometimes.
But you also made a comment about you get it frozen and overthinking about it. You're a flute player. When you play your flute and you're playing that music,
Yeah.
are you overthinking that music?
I'm not thinking about it at all. I don't even know what's coming out, really.
Exactly. So
I think the same way for me.
is in that zen zone, however you want to word it, of feel what's right and you go with it. And sometimes it's your intellect, sometimes it's the gods moving through us and maybe giving us a little nudge, whatever, but you just gotta be open to knowing that music is going to happen, or that book, or that experience.
You tapped into something there that's super critical that everybody that I'm looking at on this list in this group right now does. Okay.
That admin right there, that person there knows is no slouch of what she does either. I promise.
Right.
Absolutely. I've been enjoying the ladies groups with them, which has been fun. I am thinking of joining the AFA.
Nice.
Come on.
What we're all tapping into is it's called invocation in my line of work, right? But what you're doing is you're invoking your higher ancestral eternal self. Like, Bryan, when you get on a roll, when you're writing or when you're talking in front of people, this happens to you. I know you've experienced it. I've seen it. You're channeling this higher self. You may not even, like 5 minutes later, you may not even realize the words that came out of your mouth.
I read that shit in my books all the time, and I'm like, I wrote that? Well, I'm serious. I've read my books, and I'm like, I don't fucking remember writing that.
Right? Yeah. We're channeling something that's bigger than us, okay? And that's
absolutely.
This is the folk soul's response to us expressing enough grief, enough disaster, enough willpower, enough success to
getting out of our own damn way,
to show that we're committed.
Yes.
And that's the folk soul coming meeting us halfway, you know.
I think for me it's just a matter of getting out of my own way.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. No, that really is it.
Because I see things that fire me up. I see things that I don't like. I see
we all do.
I got a real problem sometime with this list of qualifications that a man has for a woman, and I get it. I get having a standard. I get all of that. But I don't get is not taking the risk. I don't get not taking the risk to find out. And I see sometimes people avoiding that because they don't want to take the risk. What will other people think? And I'm like, and I just, God damn it, you can't never be afraid to get out there and try again. And that especially includes affairs of the heart. And that is something that I wish we could see more of. So when I see people make these denigrating comments or these ego boosting ideas online, it kind of, it really gets under my skin for a lot of reasons.
It should.
Number one of which is we're denigrating one of the most important aspects of who we are, that complementing, competing aspect of the feminine and the masculine. Shiva doesn't become or ascend to what he's supposed to become until he copulates with Kali.
Balance of masculine and feminine.
Yeah. And it's kind of, and I see that as kind of a puritanical scar of Christianity that's trying to fester its way into what we're trying to do here, hiding behind moral ideas as if they're legitimate. When I don't necessarily think that's, they would say, well, that's how our ancestors did. Our ancestors had arranged marriages and they had slaves and concubines. So don't tell me about the morality of our ancestors.
Yeah, let's not go there.
I don't want to hear about that. Don't give me that shit. That son of a bitch got horny. He took care of business with whoever was available.
Yep.
And so, but there was a real legitimate, we are supposed to be at this stage of the game of a higher mindset. We are at this stage of the game supposed to be able to embrace those higher thought processes, those higher states of being. And we're trying to create them out of this ancient past, the incorporation of ourselves into the environment we live in. I see these things as the kind of things that detract us from our ability to do that in no small manner. And it's
failure to recognize where you are, failure to recognize where you really are in comparison. We'll use the ancestors as a comparison. The idea that we are somehow evolved where do we get that idea? Because evolution happens. Well, entropy happens too.
Yes, it does.
Now, so let's take a look at this and get kind of deep into it and allow ourselves to start asking the right questions, like, why do I have this idea? Now, and if you come to me with these sets of ideas that are your list of requirements for yourself or for your mate or for anybody or anything else, my first question is always going to be, where'd you get that? Whether I agree with it or not, whether I think it's a good idea for me or not, where did you get that? And if you haven't asked yourself that question, you're absolutely fucking wrong. Now, if you've asked yourself that question and you haven't found the answer, that's reasonable. I can work with that. But
challenging all those assumptions is integral.
Exactly. So what's good for Sean? What's good for Sean's family? What's good for Sean's tribe? Those are the first three things I ask myself, right? Whatever the tribe group is, whatever that means, right? But those are the things. Does it apply to my blood and my soil? In other words, who I am and where I am, because the dirt right here, in addition to having its own land spirits and everything else, it has its own effect. It has its own interaction with the other kinds of people that are around here that aren't like me, right? Those all have to be kind of brought under, and this is not too much to process, okay?
No, it's not
for anybody to process. You could throw it out in a couple algebra equations probably and sort it out. But the thing is, we're going on emotion, instinct, and training, okay? And instinct isn't playing a big enough role. That's what I'm seeing.
I think the question that I've started to ask myself recently, what am I doing that's getting in my way?
That's the right kind of question.
And I don't like the answers all the time.
Right.
I'm always asking myself that.
Frozen.
Huh?
I think that instinct is frozen in a lot of people.
It is. It's replaced by, yep. For those people that know about narcissism, right? You consider your construct of reality. If you're a modern day American, your construct of reality is set up by two separate narcissists that are working the same program, even if you don't even know a human that's a narcissist, and that is your government and your church, your government and your Protestantism or whatever it is, or Catholicism, whatever you're dealing with. But those influences are social. They're not limited to just government and just the church, right? Every form of media that we have is influenced by those things that work best for those narcissists, not that works best for us. So we got to take that into consideration a little bit when we're trying to ask ourselves these right questions that'll guide us to healthy answers.
I think that's the reason courage and honesty are at the top of the list. Honesty are at the top of the list of the 9 noble virtues. If I ask myself that question, what am I doing to get in my way? I have to have the courage to answer honestly. And that's that in my life has not always been my strongest suit. It's because I mean, hell, you can look at my past behavior and see it's all over the place. The damage, the litter, the people behind me. But the idea that the instincts are frozen, that's frozen is a good term for that. Paralyzed is a good term for that.
Okay.
Nerve damage is also a good term for that. It is stagnant. You're absolutely right. That's a good observation that our instincts are not what they used to be. You can't take a regular man and throw him in the woods and expect him to do half the shit Sean and I can do.
Right.
You can't take a person out of the city, and yet, that's something else too. I was thinking about earlier today that these instincts are frozen. If you look at the survival people, the preppers, they're counting on something bad to happen to validate their existence. You ever think about that? They're counting on something bad to happen to justify the uses of these instincts that they have yet to cultivate.
And most of people were excited.
Yeah.
Should only last 3 days. Because
then they're screwed. Heaven forbid they had to put them to use.
I'm sorry, Heather. I was talking over you. I didn't hear what you said.
No, they're good.
I mean, it's like, so my point of view with preppers is, they're good to laugh at, but at least they're working on stuff. But to me, it's like, well, that should be a lifestyle, because
yes, that's exactly right.
We need to be prepared for life. And I mean, I have had to go through absolute hell because my life got totally taken away from me. And now I've had to rebuild everything. And I've had to rely on that knowledge and ability to know how to survive through anything and adapt. And, oh, I can do this and modify this and do whatever and just make do with what I have and get through some of the craziest shit in the last handful of years.
Yeah,
My
I know.
problem is I was more comfortable under those circumstances than I was in prosperity.
Yes.
That's interesting too. I have been more apt to self-destruct in prosperity than I have in survival mode. I'll just tell you right now.
Yeah,
I'll
man.
never, I've got 6 figures in the bank. You know what? Somebody shake out a line. That's what we'll do. Let somebody shake out a big line. We'll have some fun every fucking time. And there it goes. Within a year, it's fucking gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you look at genetics and ancestral soul, and I've been doing a whole bunch of reading up on like
epigenetics. Is that what you're talking about?
Epigenetics, but about our ancestors who lived through the last ice age, because that only ended a little more than 12,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so our ancestors.
Same time of that is that Younger Dryas event.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I've been really digging into a lot of that too, but
good. Buy my book because I wrote about it. Life and the Love of Life. It talks all about it.
Yep.
But our ancestors were surviving through an ice age.
Yeah.
They were fighting megafauna that were trying to eat them, and they were trying to eat, trying to have families, trying to live, trying to do all these things. And so that
they weren't trying, they were doing it.
They were
doing it.
They were doing it. But so that has preset a lot of our very Northern European peoples.
You know what?
Once I started connecting into all of that, it was like, that's where that some of my personality traits, it's not personality, just certain things, the way I react to things, like a lot of people, it's like you're feeling good, the world's great, and you got to destroy it because you got to be able to have that challenge to.
Adversity is life. Adversity is life, man. That's all there is to it.
Yes. Yep. That's it.
You know what? You said 10 or 12,000 years ago. You do know that the last time those kind of conditions, the conditions we live in, existed on this planet were about 130 to 120,000 years ago.
Yep.
And so they've got some evidence of an existence of men using some kind of simple tool and possibly ceremonial structure of an animal they killed in San Diego.
They're all over the world. And I mean, I'm into all the weird, crazy alternative archeology stuff.
So you're a fan of Hancock then? What you telling me?
Oh yeah.
More than just Hancock. I read Velikovsky when I was 10. Okay.
I don't know who that is. So
to me, Graham Hancock is mainstream.
Yeah. He is way too mainstream for some of that.
No, not too mainstream, but he is mainstream. I mean, he's a perfect. Yeah, I dig what he's. I dig what he's doing.
I do too.
Yeah, so I know.
I do too. I think that's one of those kind of awakening things that's occurring when a skilled journalist begins to examine these things.
Yes.
And begins to put them down on paper. There's going to be lots of people that poo-poo the idea. Heaven forbid that should ever be the case. But when a skilled journalist, war correspondent, begins to examine these ideas with the kind of legitimacy and scientific approach that he does, I mean, do we not do ourselves a disservice to not begin to evaluate them for what they might mean in our existence now? And
absolutely, we need to evaluate that stuff.
Essential that we do so. If we limit ourselves to only the kind of material that we hear other people parrot because they think they know something, I think we do ourselves a great disservice in examining the future, the frontier of our own spirituality and our own existence on this planet.
Yep.
I mean, in this realm and many others to follow. Who knows what that might look like?
So let's throw the law of correspondence at that exact thing that you just said and apply that very same concept that we're talking about with regard to history, okay? And start applying that to the way we organize ourselves as people.
Good. I like that.
You know what I'm saying? Let's look at how we can take that really healthy way of doing things. And we're talking about in the structure of historical perception right now, and let's take that into psychology, and let's take that into medicine, and let's take those same principles and run them across the board there. And that's an advanced version of the shamanism that I'm practicing right now. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
What I'm
I
trying
do.
to develop in people is to ask the right questions and do the things that make sense, do what works for you, and figure, do a little trial and error, but have the discipline not to lie to yourself. And discipline not
think
to lie to yourself.
That's absolutely true. I mean, we have to ask ourselves who told us to think that. And I don't think people are willing to have that answered. Who told you to think that way about yourself?
Right? Why is it that I find this attractive, but I don't find that attractive? Ask yourself that question, and don't stop asking until you get some fucking answers, man.
Well, my daddy said never trust blonde-headed men. So, I mean,
right?
So I got stuck with that for some damn reason. But
right. That's the kind of shit I'm talking about. But at least you asked the question. You got an answer, because if you didn't ask the question, you would never know. You know what I mean? And that's actually a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
I think for me, what you're talking about, and I think it's probably the case for a lot of people, is when I came in here, I didn't feel good about myself.
Right.
I didn't feel like the individual I am today. And even now, I still have things that cause me pain. I want to be free of that. And I can, and at 49 years old, I can't dodge it. I can't duck it. I can't run from it. I can't justify it anymore. And I think that's when we all get down to it. I mean, if we can't begin to provide that, we're really not providing what this world needs at this point. The idea that in this spirituality, there is a world of stuff we can look at. There's a ton of things we can talk about. There's thousands of wonderful conversations we might indulge in and enjoy. But at the end of the day, there's got to be the realization that in this moment, right here, right now, all of us sitting here, we're okay.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the most beautiful things we could come across. And from that position of just being okay, maybe we can move forward a little bit and handle some of the things that you're talking about, asking that hard question and taking that honest appraisal. I think that inventory of oneself is one of the most important things we could ever do.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we've made any kind of emphasis on that. See, that brings up where you're short at. Can you fight? Can you hunt? Do you why are you jealous? Why is this hurt you? I mean, why do you still hate your dad? Why do you still hate your mom? Your sister did this. Your brother stole your girlfriend. All of this fucking nonsense that we carry around and put on autoplay in our heads.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve us any good purpose. It doesn't serve us any good purpose at all. And I don't see anyone else saying, you know what? Your instincts are frozen because you've got them crudted up with a bunch of shit from your past you need to get rid of so you can move forward in this world. Yep. And I'm wondering if there's a place in our lore, in the way we do things in this spirituality, for that to occur. I mean, is there a legitimate place for that? What do you think, Sean?
That's what shamanism is all about. But up until the last couple of years, man, most of the mainstream heathens weren't willing to approach that direction. That's all Wicca. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, you're the first person that said shamanism, and I was like, oh my God, am I allowed to say that now? Is this good?
Right.
Can I do it? I've been looking for him.
Yeah. Well, there's no other fucking word for it, because what I think, I'm motivated by a specific responsibility within our heathen community. Okay. And that specific responsibility is to go back before any Christian intervention at all and try to sort out some things,
Yeah.
and try to teach other people, to give them the tools that they can do that. Because let's face it, not everybody's got the exact same genetic setup that I have. I mean, I know that I've got Hari, and I know that I've got Frisian, but you know what I'm saying? It took it took my mom 10 years of work to sort that out, right? Not everybody's got that kind of time, or a mom like mine, or the energy, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So forget all that, all right? But let's go. What can we do to augment all the other things that we have? Let's not ignore the energetic part, the epigenetic part, the quantum science part.
Yay.
Shamanism and quantum science have never had an argument. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that part is really, really important to me. And that's kind of my experiment for this lifetime. I hope it benefits somebody. I think it has a little bit at least, but we gotta be able to sort of put these things together instead of considering them separate, which is, we live in a time where that science it's called, there's a name for it. It's called material reduction. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, that's where things are, you only look at everything by the sum of, a thing can never ever be more than the sum of its parts. And there's no mathematical value to that way of thinking. It's the same thing as germ theory, you know, the idea that if I have a germ and I come in contact with you, then you're going to get it. But it didn't take into any account whatsoever stuff like the condition of the host, which is the most important factor involved, right? Well, we're taking that same kind of fucked up mental attitude and applying that to because of academic conditioning, we're applying that to our lives, and our lives don't happen in an academic environment. They happen in the real fucking world, you know?
Jack Donovan said it best. I know this is going to piss off Justin, but I'm going to say it anyway. Life without a poetic framework is just math.
That's right.
I'm still pissed he thought of that before I did, because it's literary gold.
He
Life
did
without a poetic framework is just math.
There's about 4 other guys that thought of it, but he put it in a real good way, a real good frame. That we can all,
that's where I heard it first, and I was just
I hear you.
Fucking brilliant, because it's true. If you don't have some passion in your life, you're it's really not worth it. It's not, it don't count much. It's simply existing.
You know, there's a great when I was 15 years old, I read a book that that was mostly useless, but it had this one thing in it that was super powerful to me, and I've carried that to this day, and it's been useful. And that was no ordinary motion. That was the concept. What that means is, when I go to grab this cup, okay, it's a conscious effort. I grab the cup exactly the way I want to grab the cup, and I set it down exactly the way that I want to. You know what I'm saying? That there's intent involved, right? And the book was called Way of the Peaceful Warrior, by the way.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Yeah.
So, but no ordinary emotion. Now, if you apply that to a bunch of other parts of your life, that's the poetry, man. That's the beauty of it. That's where you choose words that flow a little bit better because you can, you know, that kind of shit. It matters. And you're right. And so is Jack Donovan.
He said it.
Fuck
Well,
yeah,
you've done a lot of good for me, Sean, because, you know, for me, all those parts were waking up, the energy, the shamanism, and it was stuff that was happening to me. I was able to do things for other people, and it was there, but there wasn't
Right.
word for it. If I brought it up, it was named all these different things, and I was too, you know? And so to find you was just so validating, you know, and I'm learning from you as well, but it's just,
Thank you. I'm
so
flattered by that.
amazing.
That's cool.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
Um,
but yeah, there's no other word to put to it. I mean, you could call some parts of what we're doing save, and you could call some
Yeah.
parts of what we're doing different. You could call them different things,
Yeah.
and that would be accurate. Okay, but it comes back to that land nav idea that I threw out earlier. You know, we got to figure out where we really are, and if we really kind of don't know, some of us got to go back and start from zero.
yeah,
You know, now the cool thing about that in this day and age is that if we're reinventing the wheel, we've got computers to help us reinvent the wheel today.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
So we can integrate information faster maybe than we could before, but there's a lot of information that indicates that shaman could communicate across continents just the way that the internet
Yes.
today. So I'm not at that level, but you know, maybe one day.
I know, right? You need to watch that deal with Valerie.
Oh no, I'm in the process of it. As soon as I get off here, I'm going to finish watching it.
Yeah, she's
Okay. I might have to go jump on there too.
She's
I
doing
recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, she's
Oh,
doing the
definitely.
same thing you're doing, and I'm glad to see it happening the way it's happening. I like the natural.
There's a theme here, and it's like the same message. It's getting brought up over and over again. And one of them
True.
is we need to do our own work, and we need to start back at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we just have to do our own research and come together with that.
And that doesn't mean we have to throw out what we have.
No.
You know, I tell that to individual. I mean, I'm saying that to us as a community, but I
Yeah.
also tell that to individuals that are trying to do what we're doing, that have come from other traditions, that are trying to get back to their own. Don't throw all that shit out. Use what you got. The ancestors will help manipulate that into what is best for you for now. And that's the whole job of the Disseer, you know? Well, not the whole job, but it's one of the most important jobs to me that, you know, that they do, is help guide
I
us.
think that's what's guiding me to you and to other people.
Mhm.
And that's how it's all kind of unfolding right now.
Right. It
I
matters.
see that too.
I like it. I like it all. Sean, we've been at this an hour. Let's call it quits and call it good.
That sounds great, man. I enjoyed the shit out of this, guys. Thank you so
I
much.
do
for-
too.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank
see-
you.
We'll see
I'm
you guys
glad I
around.
noticed it was happening.
Yeah, what a great group of
Absolutely.
people. Thank you. Have a great week and happy Memorial Day, guys.
That's right. Grab life by the nose and whip its ass.
That's right.
Yeah, good.
All right. Stop this recording.